Guys, if you want to see how to set up Obsidian and Claude Code, how to do the ingest that was introduced by Andrej Karpathy, keep watching. I'm going to show you the setup, super easy. Then I'm going to talk about a few use cases. A few days ago, Andrej Karpathy released a concept how you can actually create your local RAG using Claude Code, and in his example and in our example today, Obsidian as well. This post went completely viral, so I'm going to walk you through how to set it up, then talk about the benefits, the cons of using it, and two use cases for a designer and a product manager. So the concept itself is pretty simple. You drop in the raw information like articles, PDFs, notes, and transcripts, even images. Then you ask Claude Code, in our example, to read through it and understand the assets that it has available, and then it creates a wiki pages out of it. In Obsidian, as an example, you can use tags, you can relate different assets together, so it's way easier for Claude Code to actually go and kind of trace the path. So in my case, I have used it today to analyze and kind of capture my transcripts from all the videos. What I have also included is a bunch of thumbnails, which are also linked to those documents. So I can at some point analyze the performance of each individual thumbnail and see patterns. So I'm going to show you how to set this up. This is Obsidian. It is actually super easy. Once you have everything in your kind of a raw folder, then the LLM, or in our case Claude Code, is going to create, in this case it created a flat list of files. In your case it could be just a bunch of subfolders with files in those subfolders, but it creates all of this automatically, and they all kind of contain all the references to the raw files, which the LLM will never really edit. It just references those files. The LLM also creates a claude.md file that kind of describes the next time you want to ingest new articles, new assets, what to do with that, so it can actually keep adding to the same RAG and linking everything together. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is obviously have Obsidian, so just navigate to obsidian.md. I'm going to put all the links in the description with kind of a guide as well, and all the links to Karpathy's posts and GitHub. So just download whatever system you're using, download and install it. Okay, once you have your Obsidian on your machine, let's just create a folder. So I'm going to create a new folder, and then in this folder we're going to create another one called raw. This is where all the raw data is gonna live. The first time you open Obsidian, you're going to get this kind of a pop-up, which is going to ask you to create a new vault, or you can open a folder. And this is what we are going to use today. So I'm going to open that folder. So let's open Claude as that folder for our vault. So I'm going to click open. Now you can go and customize your Obsidian however you want. What I just did, I just changed the theme to use a dark theme, and I have added terminal as the community plugin, so we can run Claude Code inside of Obsidian. So now if you look at on the left hand side, this is our raw folder here. So this is the folder that is local in the Claude parent folder, subfolder being raw. Now it's empty, so we need to add some documents to it. What I'm going to use is I'm going to use a plugin or an extension for Chrome to actually scrape a website. So there's a cool extension for Chrome, which is called Web Clipper for Obsidian, which lets you kind of grab all the content from a website and create a markdown file automatically in your open vault. So to get it, you just click add to Chrome. Obviously, I do already have that, but you would just normally install that in your Chrome. It's safe and it's used by many people. Grab this post from the Anthropic's website using the web clipper. If you look on the right hand side here, this is where the extension is. One thing worth actually changing is the actual name of the folder you want the information to go to. So I'm going to call the folder raw as it is called in Obsidian. Also, if you were to go to settings, you can see that the vault setting here currently it just says to use the opened vault. You can specify, maybe if you have a different vault you want this information to be saved, then you can specify the name. It has to be named exactly as the folder is being named, but I'm going to leave this blank so it knows we have an Obsidian open. Just use folder called raw and just store the data there. And we are just going to add to Obsidian, and as you see, it automatically took us to Obsidian to the folder raw. And this is our file. It is a file that is going to be used for us to actually ingest and create a wiki using Andrej Karpathy's logic and so on. So I'll show you that in the next step. So Karpathy has created a markdown file, which kind of guides the LLM. It gives the LLM a lot of freedom what to do actually, but it describes the core idea, how the wiki needs to be structured. It also provides the LLM with a few tools that the LLM has access to. So all you really need to do, and it's super easy, you can either just select the entire markdown file from here or just click on raw. It is going to show us the raw text. You just copy the entire text and we go back to Obsidian. Start Claude Code here in Obsidian. You can use whatever you want to use, obviously. I'm just going to use Obsidian as my IDE today. I'm just going to paste that information from Andrej Karpathy. So this is pasted here, and then I'm going to go to my prompt that I have created, which is here in Excalibur. Just select that. And what it just says, it kind of guides the LLM that you are my LLM wiki agent, build my complete second brain, set up index.md, log.md, define the folder structure, then walk me through the first ingest step, paste that into Claude Code and press enter. One thing that you will see here, I've got the graph open. So this is the actual document that is in the raw. We just copied from Anthropic. And this is the wiki that it's already building out. So you can see a bunch of folders, analyses, concepts, entities, and sources. In my case, when I was doing the YouTube ingest, it took around half an hour in my case. But have a look. So it's already doing that. Let me actually collapse that. So this is our graph. And once it's done, you're going to see links coming from one file to the other file. Okay, so we see first kind of files appearing and the relationships being created. Depending on the it's kind of a decisions, it might be, up to 10, maybe 20, 30 files. Depends what it actually wants to do. Okay, nice. So it didn't take that long because we just had one article. We've got a summary as well here. How many pages? It created 15 pages, and then it actually suggests what to do next. So next time you grab something new or you have a new file, you just type and ingest it, and it's going to go through the entire process again, making sure that it links this new asset to the current structure and also create new files and so on. Now, why is this so cool? You can obviously use the graph to navigate between entities or just the folder structure. You will see that if I were to, let's say, click on the attribution graph, you will see tags that actually link to other entities as well. So they interlink. Kind of works like a kind of a knowledge graph, obviously, and then you can actually go and dive deeper. Either you or let's say Claude or other LLM, because it's not really agnostic to Claude. Ideally, it would work in a terminal, so like a CLI tool, but you can use Codex, you can use Gemini, whatever you want to use. This can be super powerful. This is just one file. In my kind of a YouTube vault, I have around 60 transcripts, so it's very comprehensive. It also has the context of kind of what I want to achieve with this channel. There's a bunch of tools that the ingest process has access to. One of them is lint and the health check. If you run, let's say, health check is going to go and look for like entities that are not linked to anything else. So that's a very cool and useful feature. It has something called hot cache, which actually saves recent context. So you skip rereading pages. So you can add one file. It's not going to go through all those files. It's just going to ingest that one file if you direct that LLM to it. It can also search the web, so the web gap filing. And once you have this wiki, really, you can plug this into any agent, cursor, anti-gravity, whatever you want to use. And it's going to be used as a context because these are just really files when you think about it. Obviously, graph view, which we had a look at in a second ago, just a visual representation where you can actually see clusters of information, maybe gaps as well visually. And then the auto relationships, which is obviously available in Obsidian, but it just uses that to a different kind of a level, which is very useful. Okay, let's talk about pros and cons because there are some cons to this or pseudo cons. The pros is the zero complex infrastructure. It's all local. So there's no hassle when it comes to that, but it's slow to ingest large batches. Depending on how many files you have and you want to just start this journey, it might take a while. The knowledge compounds over time, obviously. So if you make this a habit, it doesn't take that long. You just keep adding more assets to it, but it doesn't scale when it comes to millions of documents, right? So if you're kind of in an enterprise environment and you actually want to have millions of files, that could be challenging. That's where you would probably use RAG and embeddings and all that. Now, when you kind of use Claude or any other CLI tool, obviously there's going to be way less tokens, right? When you do the querying, because the relationships are already there. The LLM doesn't have to go and scan the entire folders and the entire context. That's a huge benefit. But the downside to it is the first time you do this, it obviously needs to ingest, it needs to create those links. So that can be, I mean, it's not going to be costly, but that is going to cost money, right? Now, the other pro is that you can plug in this into any Claude project or really any assistant that you're using. Again, Cursor, Anti-Gravity, Kiro, whatever you like. And the con is that you actually have to, you have to have this habit to make sure that you are actually ingesting new data sets to it. Now, two use cases, because some of you are either designers or product managers watching this channel. So from a designer's perspective, having such a wiki can be super powerful for your design work. So here are kind of a few ideas what you might actually put into this wiki, like design system documents, component decisions, bright guidelines, then tone of voice, whatever your kind of a company or your business is, that's going to be used for as a context. Then obviously user research notes, interview transcripts, that's another one that could be very useful. Figma audit logs, if you have any of those, and then critique feedback, maybe if you have done some kind of a design crit, that could be also useful. Accessibility standards, and then obviously competitor UX teardowns as well. That could be super useful. So any context that you can add to that wiki, I think is just going to supercharge your kind of a design decisions and the direction, especially when it comes to UX and solving problems. Not entirely sure about the UI, but solving problems and the user experience 100%. I would probably think in terms of like, if I am a new person starting, in this company, I should just be able to get the wiki and get onboarded super quickly, right? So think about the term done and what the term done means in 2026. I think when we tend to just design and the design itself, the Figma design, or even an application like a POC is the only thing that we deliver. Everything that has been shipped needs to be documented and it should be available to others. So anyone should be able to query that. And the tribal knowledge is another thing that is, is very common in big companies. There's a lot of tribal knowledge. But I think if all that tribal knowledge is in that wiki, everyone has access to it, and it doesn't become tribal anymore. Now, from the PM side, I think, and I have experienced that, and I don't quite understand why PMs are not doing that already, using other solutions, maybe like GitHub, having one repository for all their documentation. But what I would probably see is like product specs, and product specs, like the features you're working on now, so they're not siloed, but also the ones that you have worked in the past, right? So like product specs, PRDs, decision logs as well, stakeholder interview notes, if you have any, sprint retros, meeting transcripts, OKRs, obviously, metrics, KPI notes related to the features as well, then the customer feedback, NPS, comments and scores maybe, and then obviously competitor product teardowns and positioning. And in the same way as the designer, the PM should probably also think like, what is the definition of done for me in 2026? I have shipped this, that's cool, but what is next, right? Like it needs to be documented for any other PM to be able to leverage that, or their own LLM to be able to leverage that when they are working on the next feature. So if it is shipped, then the why needs to be saved somewhere. The why is probably in the PM's head, but it's not documented anywhere. It needs to be documented. It needs to be in the wiki so others can leverage that. When a new product manager joins, like how do you onboard? How do you offload the information? A new PM gets the full context and they can query the LLM to see what has been done, maybe come up with a few more ideas, and the teams change, right? The memory will survive with a wiki. And again, it doesn't have to be this. This is an amazing way of doing it, but it can be anywhere. It can be in GitHub. Have a habit of storing it in one place and you can query it. Okay, so one concern you might have, because this is local, right? How do people contribute to it? And obviously, you can create a repository in GitHub. That is probably the easiest way to do it. And that's what actually I have done. So all the raw files, images, and all the wiki that I have, that I've created for myself for this YouTube channel, this is all in my repository. So So if I were to go to my GitHub and to this repository, it is exactly the same thing. So you can imagine that if you have a group of product managers, group of designers, they can just contribute to the same repository in GitHub. And then once you decide to use Obsidian for it, you can just ask Claude or Codex, whatever CLI, hey, check what new files have been added to this GitHub repository. And that's going to update your local version of that repository, which is your wiki. Guys, let me know in the comment below, what do you think about storing all the information, company context, your design system context, your PRDs, all of them, not just the current feature you're working on in one place for the LLMs to use. So thanks for watching. I'm going to put in the description all the links you need to set this up, and I am going to see you next time. Bye.